And Sam, to answer your question of like, once I hit that level, I kept working as I am now, and I don't think I was any happier, but I have less financial stress, less career stress,
But
because
that's
10 years
happiness,
ago,
dude. That's
well, no,
happiness.
no, I see
That's
that I
such a
disagree
cop
with.
out. I hate
No,
when people say money doesn't make you happier, but it just gets rid of money problems. And I'm like, yeah, when I worried about rent, I was unhappy.
see, I think
Now I
there's
don't.
and
I'm
like
more happy. I'm not necessarily happy, but I'm happier.
I think I think we probably agree. This is like arguing over the definition of words, but I would say there's a big difference between happiness and a reduction of anxiety. I think those are very different things. Happiness is like you wake up grinning ear to ear, or it's like if you're watching the funniest comedy you've ever seen
Sure.
and you're just like laughing on the floor. That's a happy moment, but it's always fleeting. But to me, the reduction of anxiety or contentment, that is something that money can buy, and that is worth chasing. It's great. So like when people say money can't buy happiness, what they're implicitly saying is it's not worth chasing. I think it absolutely is worth chasing, but it's not going to give you happiness per se. It's going to give you contentment and a reduction of anxiety, which is wonderful. It's a massive increase in the quality of your life. But in my definition, it's not necessarily happiness. But I feel like I hit that. I feel like my wife and I were talking about this last night. I feel like I'm in a better mental state of like less anxiety than I've had relative to, 5 or 10 years ago, which is great.
You, you wrote The Psychology of Money. You've studied this a lot. I want to ask you what are the biggest or maybe the most common leak? Instead of most common, I would say the most impactful psychological leak, meaning a psychological trap or mistake people make around money. And I want you to answer it for somebody who is kind of on the come up, so somebody who isn't totally financially independent yet, and then for rich people who still have a bunch of weird psychology and a weird relationship with money. I want you to tell me what you've seen or what you believe is kind of maybe the biggest psychological mistake people have around money in each of those buckets.
I think there's two. I'll start with one that's probably the biggest, which is social comparison, which is always, Sean, you just mentioned, you want to be a guy, you should be a guy with $100 million. I'm willing to bet if you told 17-year-old Sean that figure, you would faint. But it doesn't seem that ridiculous to you now because I bet you know people who are worth $100 million. And so who you compared yourself to when you were 17 or 25 is different now. And I think there's no end to that. If, and I hope you are worth $100 million someday, I guarantee you're going to start comparing yourself to people who are worth 200, 500, a billion. And that never ends. Never, ever ends. The point I always make is like the minimum wage in the MLB is like 500,000 a year, whatever it is, 400, whatever it is. A shitload of money by any definition if you're making $500,000 a year. And I guarantee you there's not a single minimum wage professional baseball player who thinks they're doing well because they're comparing themselves to their teammates who are making 10 million a year. And so there's no end to that, but you always think there is, which is why I, for myself, had this idea. Once my net worth is X, I'm never going to work ever again. But now that I'm here, maybe it is because I'm comparing myself to other people, other authors. Maybe that's at least part of it. So I think even if I can write these philosophies and made a living talking about these, like I'm still susceptible to that as anyone else. I think everybody is. So I think it's such a natural thing. I mean, in all of evolution, what matters is not how much success you have. It matters that you have more success than the other person. Because in a competition for resources, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if you're worth $1 billion. If somebody else is worth $1,000,000,001, they have more resources than you. And from an evolutionary perspective, they're going to win and you're going to lose. So that like always chasing, no matter how much you have, is a big psychological underpinning to people's anxiety. The second that I would mention that's probably equally as important is realizing that there is not one right answer for everybody. And everyone in finance is always seeking the right answer, like quote unquote, the right. It doesn't exist. I think it's much closer to like your taste in music of like, there's no such thing as the best music. You like this, I like that, to each their own. And a lot of times when you have a financial debate of people like, I can't believe you manage your money like that. Why don't you do it like me? You're not actually debating. It's people with a different risk tolerance, different social aspirations, different family dynamics who are talking over each other. And I think it's hard for people to come to terms of like, look, that works for you. This works for me, to each our own. People don't want to settle on that because it's easier to think that there should be a right answer like there is in math.